Hello, welcome to my presentation and thank you for coming. My name is Anna Orridge and today I would like to introduce you to an OER in development. The title of my project is Tackling Plagiarism Positively, a resource for academic English teachers. My background is in ESL. Although I'm currently working freelance as a tutor, I have previously worked in higher education as a pre-sessional English coordinator. And I noticed that plagiarism was presenting tutors in EAP, or English for Academic Purposes, with a lot of headaches. This was the front cover of the Times on January the 2nd of this year. I'll just allow you a moment to read the caption. Now, this report claimed that there has been an exponential rise in cases of student plagiarism in the UK HE sector, and that this rise has been disproportionately fuelled by overseas students. I should stress that I think this report needs to be regarded with some scepticism. However, there is some genuinely concerning information embedded within it. The data quoted from the 70 universities which supplied information specifically on overseas students does indicate quite clearly that students such as these account for quite a large number of the academic misconduct cases. So this brings me to the central question. Why would overseas students be more inclined to plagiarise? Speaking from personal experience, I think quite a lot of this comes down to students simply feeling overwhelmed. They're often very young, they don't have much experience of studying abroad on their own, and they're reeling from culture shock. So you have a student who's presented with an academic journal article, they're asked to produce their first written assignment, and they think, I just cannot produce something of this quality, no matter how hard I try. And that's where plagiarism becomes temptation. And that brings us to another question. Does culture have a role to play? There is definitely a stream of thought in the academic literature that culture does have an influence on the way you view intellectual property, and that the Western view of plagiarism is rooted in a particular perspective on human rights and the sanctity of property. Park stated in a 2003 essay that some cultures have different notions of respect for authority and traditions of academic writing than Anglophone countries, and that we need to take this into account. This point of view has been challenged, though. Liu, writing in 2005, states that the argument that cultural conditioning is primarily responsible for plagiarism among Chinese or Asian students is a dubious one, because it is based primarily on incorrect information and is presented often via unwarranted jumps in reasoning and conflation of separate issues. And I think there is a great deal of truth in that. So, how about language? Is this the key issue? Liu certainly thinks so. He says lack of language proficiency and writing skills is perhaps the major reason that ESL students resort to plagiarism. And I think on the whole I would agree with this. Of course, this means that people involved in ESL, particularly AP teachers, have a very important role to play in tackling the issue. So, where are we going wrong at the moment? Universities, of course, are aware of this problem, and they have been for some time. Quite a lot of institutions have created online learning objects and tutorials. They're often excellent, very visually attractive, detailed, but they are often created with an assumption in mind. I think McGowan, writing in 2005, sums this up very nicely. He says, one of the consequences of stating or implying that all plagiarism is unacceptable is that the default situation is necessarily a disciplinary rather than an educational one. And you see this in many of the resources. There's often these huge lists of things not to do. I think that's quite off-putting, and that was the inspiration for the positively in my title. And so on to my project. My theme is innovation, and these are the ways I aim to be innovative in my approach. I'm intending to create a free online resource bank. It will contain materials aimed at ESL students to be pursued independently, and there will also be a series of lesson plans aimed at EAP teachers. All this will be targeted very specifically at the ESL market. And I hope the lessons will be able to be slotted into existing curricula, because I think the key thing about plagiarism is that it cannot be treated as an isolated topic. but needs to be taught in a scaffolded manner alongside relevant subjects or skills, rather like the sandwich in this picture. So, I'll start off with a resource which is targeted at students. This is an online choose your own adventure story. Some of you may remember these books. The idea is that you read a passage and then you have to choose one or two narrative options, and you go to a particular page, then you make another choice, and it kind of branches out, and there are a whole series of endings that you could conclude with. Now, I thought I'd use Google Slides to create an online version of this. So, why the format? Firstly, it's fun and interactive, and secondly, because the story follows undergraduate overseas students. So it helps you to see how the issues and the theory can play out in an academic context. Just to give you a screenshot here to show you what I mean, you can see you've got a fairly simple story. You click on one option or the other at the bottom of the screen, and that will take you to the next part of the narrative. And on to the teacher's resource bank. Teachers will be able to download these lesson plans. They will include students' versions and teachers' versions. I'll be showing you some samples of the teachers' versions today. They'll cover a range of topics surrounding plagiarism and intellectual property, which I'll just give you a second to read. In these lessons, I will be using the OU's version of the Harvard referencing system, but the lessons will be easily adjustable if tutors want to train students in another system. So we'll now go on to one of the lessons, which I'm going to show you. I should stress it's probably not a good idea to try and read the text because it's quite small. I just want to show you the kind of layout, but I will later be showcasing the lessons via Twitter and via my blog if you want to have a closer look. So here's the first stage of the lesson. It starts with a choice of warm-up activities, and you can see the second one is a short video and describes some recent research into happiness. So after the warm-up exercise, students are given a short extract from an academic paper on the way happiness is viewed in different cultures. They're asked to read it quickly. They're then asked to do some skimming and scanning activities, which would be a very typical element of a communicative ESOL lesson. And you've also got the part about paraphrasing and quotation linked in, where students are required to identify some examples of these. The lesson plans will also be provided with links to videos that I've created. In this case, a Powtoon movie. I've got some screenshots of it here, and this movie briefly explains the difference between paraphrase and quotation, and also why it is a good idea to paraphrase as well as just quote. In the next section, we have a vocabulary activity, and this involves locating synonyms for say and tell. And then we go on to the grammatical topic of reported speech. Students are required at this stage to actually create a paraphrase in controlled grammatical practice, and the answers have been provided as well in italics because this is the teacher's version. Okay, and here we draw to the end of the lesson. Students are asked to look at 3 samples of paraphrase and to identify a good one. They are then guided to practice their own paraphrasing, and finally given an independent writing assignment. So that is the sample, and I intend to create 6 lessons altogether on different topics to share online. I'm just going to take a moment to show you the references, because failing to attribute properly in a presentation about tackling plagiarism is a bit meta, but not in a good way. So these are mostly images that you can see here. They all had a Creative Commons license attached, so they were allowed for non-commercial use. Okay, so as regards the final artefact, I intend to finish the website with the Choose Your Own Adventure story and the lesson plans and the materials by August. I will trial them with the university I've worked for before putting the website online in September 2016. So in the meantime, thanks again for coming, and are there any questions?